You're smarter than I thought over here. Okay. So the biological reasons that teenagers are irrational and, kind of they can't concentrate and things like that. There's reasons. Now, that's not going to give you carte blanche to be like, I'm a teenager, I'm going to screw up. You don't want to do that. But here's the thing. The brain does not fully develop until you're 25. So when you're 18, say, how many 18-year-olds? You're halfway to that point of maturity, your brain maturity. So the area that is still developing is called the prefrontal cortex. Just so you know, I'm going back to school. I don't know if I told you, I've been twittering it, but that's why I know all this stuff now, because I'm going into medicine. But, okay, so the prefrontal cortex, what does it do? Okay, let's think about this. When I read these off, I want you guys to think about how you do in these certain situations. It handles attention, the ability to focus on something while ignoring distractions. That's prefrontal cortex. Complex planning. So this is any time that you set a goal and it requires a degree of planning, that's your prefrontal cortex. Decision making. Bam. Impulse control. Ooh, that's a hard one. I'm going shopping. Oh, I'm going to buy this candy that's in this last. Oh, I'm going to buy that trash magazine. Oh, and before you know it, Target, you spend another $30. Logical thinking, justifying behaviors based off emotions rather than logic, is common among teenagers and women my age. Organized thinking, so that's, hormonal. Ooh, okay, that's always fun. We're not good at that one. Personality development, that's happening. Your personalities from basically 15 on, puberty on, are developing into your 20s. My son just turned 25, and I'm just now seeing that part of him where he's a lot more settled down. Not settled down as like he was a crazy guy, but he was anxious about his direction, anxious about what am I do after college, all those things, But now, 25, bam, prefrontal cortex right there. Risk management. This is a big one. I'm going to tell you a hardcore story that I did that wasn't too smart. The ability to assess risky situations and determine whether they will result in long-term benefit. Prefrontal cortex. Short-term memory. This one kind of cracks me up because it's like when you're young, you have no short-term memory, and then by the time you get to my age, you have no short-term memory. What the heck is with that? Somewhere in the middle, I guess you can memorize everything in the world. So based on this, young people are going to act on impulse, misread or misinterpret social cues and emotions. Now, this is stuff, think about like online, internet stuff, social media. People like something, they don't like something. You put something out there and you get comments that are mean. A lot of kids internalize that. The cyberbullying, right? So instead of saying, this is a non-person that I need to worry about, this troll who just commented on my stuff. If me as Kathleen, got upset every time I saw a comment that was rude, I remember when I first started doing the Rooster Teeth recap, the main comment was everybody talking about my nipples. Did you see her nipples at 2:34 seconds? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, yes, I have them. I'm sorry. They're there and they're proud. So anyways, what are you going to do? You get into accidents of all kinds. Going back to the development of adolescence, you get involved in fights because we're emotional. We act out, we do it quickly. We don't think before we speak. And we engage in dangerous, risky behavior. So it would be helpful if that instructional packet that went to your parents said, oh, don't stress out because understand, anticipate, and manage your adolescent and help them understand what they're going through. I wish that I had that, and it's like, that's just not, people don't do that, right? We don't talk about that stuff. Families don't talk about that stuff. My poor son talked about it until he was probably blue in the face. But can I tell you, he loves it because now at 25, he still comes to me for anything. He talks to me about everything, and I respect it, and he's learned from my mistakes as opposed to him doing the dumb things that I did. So if growing up and having that prefrontal cortex thing wasn't enough, how about childhood trauma experiences? Okay, I'm going to raise my hand because I've had that. You don't have to raise your hand, but everybody knows that well, I'm not going to tell you the statistics, but it's basically 1 in 5 women are sexually abused when they're a child, and I think it's like 1 in 8 for boys. So you do the math. We're sitting in a room with a lot of people. So that's pretty hardcore. But they also go through families of divorce, families of alcoholism, all that kind of stuff. And all of that is child trauma. You know what I mean? That stuff, when it happens young enough, guess what it does? That prefrontal cortex and all that chemistry in your brain, you're supposed to be like having a good time as a kid, playing hopscotch, and your serotonin and your dopamine, all those are chemicals that are in your brain going, have a good time, have a good time, have a good time. But when that stuff that happens to you that's kind of traumatic, that all gets suppressed or depressed. And that can last all the way into your adulthood, okay? So there's reasons why we feel the way we feel as we grow up, whether we have lack of self-esteem or we feel depressed or, there's reasons. There's all kinds of outside reasons. And I'm saying this because nobody talks about depression either. It's like this taboo, mental illness, all of that. I'm here to say we're talking about everything today because, screw that. It's like this is life. This is who we are, right? Can I get a yes? Okay, good. All right. Nobody's going to fall asleep today, I'm hoping. Okay, so problems in the childhood. So let's go through emotional abuse, neglect, physical abuse, family violence, sexual abuse, divorce, suicide, hardcore suicide. Yesterday at a signing, this man came up to me and he had a photo album and he opened the photo album to this beautiful picture of this woman in her wedding gown. And I was like, oh my gosh, who is this? And he says, well, this was my wife, And I said, oh my God, he says, this is a kind of an homage to her, and I'm getting all the signatures of the people that meant something to her. And I'm thinking, of course, tears are in my eyes, and I'm like, well, what happened? He says, well, she struggled with depression, and the depression won. She committed suicide. And I mean, that's just horrible. Like, that's, it's just too horrible. And so I just want to give you some statistics, because this sentence that I'm going to say is really important. Nearly 1 million despairing people worldwide will elect a permanent solution to what might have been a temporary problem. Temporary. Think about that. Everything is fleeting. In that moment where you're like, this is the worst moment ever, I hate it, it's going to pass. So that whole point of sticking with it till it passes. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for the ages of 10 to 24. That's really sad to me. That's really sad to me. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for college-age youth. And this one is really tough. More teenagers and young adults die from suicide than cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, stroke, pneumonia, influenza, and chronic lung disease combined. Each day in our nation, there are an average of 5,400 attempts of young people grades 7 through 12. Just horrible statistics, and it's because we don't talk about it, and people feel funny bringing it up, and then they're labeled. We got to stop labeling people. It's like, you know what? Everybody, even that friend of yours on Facebook that looks like their life is fantastic, everybody has hard days. Everybody has something that comes up that they have to deal with. Self-injury. This is people that, you have pain. What do? People cut, people burn, they do all kinds of stuff. Once again, that's just, it's people that are in pain and they have to do something, and to release that pain, they hurt themselves. All right, so my life, and I'm going to kind of go through this and just, I'm going to make it fun, even though this is very serious stuff, right? Okay, so childhood sexual abuse from age 5. This is all my life now. So when you have something traumatic like that happen, and this is what's crazy, you can open a psychology book and you could say, this happened to you when you're 5, and then you will basically see the next 20 years of what will happen because, like, how it correlates back to the abuse. So for me, it was acting out, cutting, eating disorder, and recklessness. That's pretty hardcore. Now, I knew enough as a teenager, I knew that what happened to me was not right. But I didn't know how to handle it. My family didn't talk about it. But I said to myself, and this is what amazes me, I said, at some point, you got to get therapy because you are not going to let this screw your life up. And I remember thinking, you know, that's a mature thing for like an 11-year-old to think in their head. So nobody talked about it in my family. And when I hit puberty, that is when it kind of all hit, because the hormones, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, something happened. Like you start having all those memories back from when you were a kid. Okay, so I got the 30-minute thing. So I'm going to go through this a little bit. I want to kind of take it as slow but as fast. Reckless thing that I did. I was in college. I was 19 years old. I actually was a really great student in high school. Never drank or anything. Went to college. St. Patrick's Day. Thought I could hold my liquor. Was at a fraternity party. I was a little sister to. Drinking, I don't know what, everything. And so got in my car. Had a new Honda, 5-speed. I was all like, oh, this is great. In the dorms, dropping people off at the dorms, dropped my last friend off, and then I decided I'm going to be Ricky Racer, right? I'm going to drive fast because I'm drunk, and I think I can do it. Okay, well, that was not the case, because I drove fast, and I rolled my car without a seatbelt on, went through the windshield, broke my back, and didn't walk for a year. Yeah. So I remember being upside down. My legs were hanging out the front windshield, and I'm like, what happened? What happened? And this is a weekend, so nobody's in the parking lot of this like huge university parking lot. There were no cell phones back then. And I remember looking out the window, and I saw these little rocks. Oh, okay, good, thank you. I saw these little rocks next to me, and I'm thinking, what are those rocks doing in the highway on the ground? Oh my God, I'm upside down. It's gonna blow. So I'm like pounding on the window trying to get out of the car. And all of a sudden I realized, oh, I have my jewelry on. I need to just roll the window up. Because of course this was, we rolled the window. So here I have a broken back, didn't know it, didn't feel anything, like my neck down. But I pulled myself out of the car. And luckily for me, there was a young man in the dorms that heard the crash. And he came out to me. And I said to him, this is what, swear to God, he said, he came to visit me in the hospital. He goes, the first thing you looked at me and said, you got to help me roll my car over because I got to get home. Okay, I can do it. So anyways, parents were not too happy about that. And it was hard. I mean, I was in the hospital for many months, and then I was put into a walker like this. I had to learn how to walk again. And then I told the people, I'm too young for a walker. So they gave me those crutches. They're called Canadian crutches. They grab onto your arms, So I did that for a year, and that was a huge eye-opener for me. So kept moving on, still hadn't dealt with the sexual abuse, so I was still kind of like in this place of not really knowing what to do, and went through eating disorders. I'm like, okay, great. If you're ever in any kind of a addiction type of thing, you know that you feel like you're inside a box, you know you shouldn't be doing it, but you do it anyways. And you don't know why. I'm going to tell you why. So I met my husband back here in California, moved to Boston, and I was very proactive to going to groups, and I was going to therapy. I'm like, I got to figure out what's wrong. I know there was something wrong in my head. I'm like, I got to figure this out because I don't want the rest of my life to be like this. Because it was very confusing and very lonely up here. So I went to this group, and this was the turning point, and this is what I really wanted to share with everybody today. I went to this workshop, and this woman described what an eating disorder looked like, because I'm a visual person. And she had this big chalkboard, and this is what it gets into. Emotions, okay? So I don't know anybody on the earth that is actually taught. We learn arithmetic, we learn how to read, but learn how to take an emotion, sit with it, figure out what it is, deal with it in our head, and then be able to move on, right? Like things hit us and we just act on it. We're just like, we're angry or we're whatever, but we can't even label it, right? So for me, it was tied to like sexual stuff because obviously I had a horrible thing happen. So what would happen is, unbeknownst to me, if something triggered that in my head, I would either not eat or I would eat and then I'd go throw up. Horrible. It's a horrible, horrible cycle. So she said, here's what happens. Think of it, and this can be anything. Shopping, drugs, pornography, eating, any kind of addiction is always triggered by something. But anyway, so she said, think of that as your eating disorder as like this monster, and it's sitting right here, okay? An emotion, something hits you, anything, anger, jealousy, stress at school, anything that you're not really familiar with dealing with, hits you, you don't know how to deal with it. So what is it? The monster, the addiction, grabs and says, you know what? Act out. Do what you know how to do, which is not deal with the emotion, but deal with just filling it up and pushing it down. So all you're doing is just pushing that monster down, pushing it down. And I sat there thinking, that makes so much sense, because I started kind of tracking when I wanted to do these silly, crazy things. And it was always when I was super emotional. So emotions are real, and we all have to honor them, right? And you have to, sit with them, which is the hardest thing. I mean, it can be something that's so awful, you don't really want to. But the thing about it is, the more you learn how to say, oh my God, I'm feeling so anxious. Anxious is one. Like, how many people have ever felt anxious in here before? Okay. Or a panic attack even, right? It's like they can come on really fast, but it's like the best thing is to sit with it and really connect and figure out, well, what started it? What triggered this? Some things are physiological and some things are emotional. Some things are psychological. So name the feeling first, what you're experiencing. Accept the feeling that you're feeling and express it. And that's the biggest thing too. It's like who you surround yourself with and the help that you get. I mean, like I said, I went to therapy and to groups and tried to interact with people that were going through the same things that I was going through, because it made me feel like I wasn't totally crazy. So I worked for a TV station called KDOC out in California, and they had a daily show, and the general manager, I was 2 years without any type of, eating disorder. Like, I had worked really hard. I think I was 27 at this point. And I'd worked 10 good long years on getting through this. And so he's like, we want to do a show on that, on eating disorders, on what you've done. Because at this point, what I did is I was working in California as a volunteer for this anorexia organization, and I was helping young girls and women of all ages. And I got to tell you, I remember thinking, I met this woman, she was in her 50s at the time, and she'd never dealt with her childhood trauma. And she'd gone through like 5 marriages and drugs and alcohol and all this stuff. And I remember thinking, God, I'm so glad that I knew enough to deal with it and knew that it wasn't going to dictate my whole life. So we did the show, and there was a woman, we had a nutritionalist, and they had me, and they had a psychologist. And the hostess said to me, well, a very leading question. She's like, well, how do you feel that, for the rest of your life you're going to be, have an eating disorder? And I was like, no, that's not how it works. And that's what I want to share with you guys. That's not how it works. There are certain diseases, they call alcoholism a disease, and there are things in the body that predispose people, yes, to maybe make it easier for them to become an alcoholic. But I believe for my situation, what my behaviors were, my acting out and the eating disorders and those kinds of things were very much the byproduct of what happened when I was young and all the things that mounted up to that. And once I got the tools and the understanding, I was like, no, I'm not going to have this the rest of my life, because I no longer reach for that or not reach for that. It's like now I handle things the way they need to be handled, right? With either, talking to a good friend, dealing with it, reading about it. I have the tools now to get through all of those situations. Doesn't mean at my ripe age of 29 that I still don't act out. I do. When I get angry, if somebody hurts my feelings, there's times where I'll say something that I, probably shouldn't. I've probably twittered some things that might have been a little hardcore once in a while. Try not to. But, there's those moments where you just go, everybody does it. It's okay. But I've learned, and that's the biggest thing. Nothing is too difficult in all of our lives that you can't figure it out. Ask somebody for help, and I'm the biggest person. So many people, and I don't know how many, if anybody here has asked me for help, but I'm the first person that will write back to you and give you my experience. That's what's important. It's experience, right? It's like, I'm happy. Well, should I say happy? I feel very lucky that what happened to me early on made me the person I am today, because I'm compassionate and I care about you guys and I care about everybody that I interact with genuinely, because I know that everybody has something and somewhere that they've come from that they're trying to overcome. And that's, you know what I mean? It's like just being kind to people. Okay. Whoa, my God. All right. Well, I'm gonna tell you a story which I think will make you laugh, hopefully. This was the first PAX that I was supposed to go to. Bernie and Matt called and said, hey, we're going to fly you from LA up to Seattle. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds great. Well, back then, I didn't really like to fly. How many know that story, that know that I didn't like to fly back then? Oh, of course, Ian, yes, I know, you know that story. Okay, so I was like, oh God, yeah, I got to fly, I got to get an airplane. Oh, shit, okay. So the flight was going to be at 6 in the morning. And I'm thinking, oh, I can't hit the bar before, right? Because I was like, I just want a shot of tequila. So my sister drops me off at LAX, and I'm all like, okay. I have my little thing. I'd get my trash magazines, and I would sit next to somebody, and I would say, hi, I'm a nervous flyer. Will you hold my hand during takeoff? And everybody would always accommodate. They were very nice. I would talk to the captain before, hey, are we going to have turbulence? Fantastic. No. Okay, good. I'm going back to my seat. So I would make my rounds, and I would do the same thing all the time. So I get on this flight, and it's packed. Okay, so that kind of makes me nervous. I'm like, everybody's all in everybody's space. I'm sitting on the aisle, because that's my other thing. I don't want to see the window. I don't want to see the ground getting closer as we're crashing. So I'm like, I just want to be in the middle, the aisle. So this big man, and I'm not saying anything about big, but he comes with his wife, and he's just a big, strong man, and he just sits next to me, and he's all up in my space, and I'm all like, oh my God, I can't breathe. And his wife sat near the window, and I'm thinking, I can't ask the husband, hey, baby, can you hold my hand? Like I would feel really funny. I was like, Kath, you can do this on your own. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. So then all of a sudden the captain comes on. He's like, ladies and gentlemen, we have a mechanical problem. We're going to be taking off not on time. I hear a mechanical problem? Are you kidding me? What? So I'm like, okay, get the trash magazines out. We're good. We're reading the trash magazine. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm sweating. All of a sudden, the guy, catty corner from me next to the window, is all like, oh, what's all these people around our plane for? What are they doing? Oh, what are those police people? I'm thinking, oh my God, bomb scare. What the hell is going on, right? 45 minutes we're waiting. So, of course, if anybody here has ever had anxiety or a panic attack, it kind of builds right to that point where you're like, ah. So all of a sudden, the captain comes on and like, ladies and gentlemen, the mechanical problem is taken care of, and we'll be on our way. So now they're pushing. And I'm all like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And the plane starts to go, and I'm like, hell no. And I whip my seatbelt off, click, and I go run into the back of the plane, and I'm like, I gotta get off this plane, I gotta get off this plane. True story. And the flight attendants are like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Thank goodness this was, well, it was actually after 9/11. I'm surprised somebody didn't just push me to the ground. And so she's like, what's going on? I said, and I'm like, I'm freaking out. I gotta get off the plane. I gotta get off the plane. I don't know. She's like, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. So she goes over to the phone. She's like, yeah, hey, Pilot John, we got a problem back here. I think you better stop. We got this problem. So he's like, okay. So then they send back Nurse Ratchet of the flight attendants, and she's all, and I'm like, she's like, okay, miss, what's going on? What's your problem? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't know. I gotta get off this plane. I'm freaking out. And she says, you realize that we've signed off and there's no mechanical problem. We're going to be fine. Don't you think you can get back in your seat and, you'll be fine? I'm like, no, I got to get off this plane. So she goes over to the phone. She goes, yeah, Pilot John, we got to go back to the gate. And so Pilot John goes on and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, we have a sick passenger. We got to bring her back to the gate and then we'll be on our way. And so I'm in the back of the plane. Flight attendant says to me, she goes, okay, honey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to your doctor. I want to get you tell him you need this medicine called Xanax. And you get back on a plane as soon as you can. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good, that's good. So she says, now don't look at anybody. She says, they're all going to be staring at you. She goes, you just go all the way to the end, and we have your stuff, and you just get off the plane, and you'll be fine. So I'm like, okay. So literally, it felt like slow motion, because I come around, and it's just like all the passengers staring at me, and I'm all like, And I got the pilots, and he's like, it's okay. And I get off the plane, and I'm all like, and they shut the door, and they're on their way. And then I had to call Bernie and Matt and say, yeah, I got sick. I couldn't come up. About 4 years later, I told them the truth. But anyway, so there is a very embarrassing story of panic attacks and things like that. So, okay. I have many stories like that, let me tell you. So, a couple things to help with stresses in life. And I got to tell you, I would love to sit in groups and sing Kumbaya with y'all because, we would have a really fun day. But I can't. Obviously, we don't have enough time. Let me see, what time is it? Oh, we're doing fine because I want to make sure I show you the special videos and talk about some other fun stuff at the end because I want y'all to be laughing at the end. I don't want you to be going, God damn, that was the most depressing panel I've ever been to. Oh, I did not see the tech panel. Oh, good. Was it worse? Okay, good. Lovely. Well, the biggest thing here, and this is important. I want to do a Q&A with you guys because I want you guys, you can ask me anything. You can ask me about productions I've been on. You can ask me, whatever, or life stuff. Because it's like, the reality is, sometimes I feel like I've lived 3 lives. People always say, you have like 9 lives, honest to God, Kath. And it's true because, everything that I've been through, there's sometimes where I even go, geez, Louise, like, oh, did anybody know the India breaking my neck story? Oh, would you like to hear it? Okay. So this is when you go through crap in your life and you work hard and you don't blame others, because I never blamed anybody. And as a matter of fact, my poor brother, it was like I had 2 people that abused me when I was a kid. One was a cousin who is now actually in jail for it. Yeah, which I'm really happy for. He actually abused his wife's daughter. And what's interesting is our families it was weird that we never saw each other. Like, it happened. I was 5 for a while, and then all of a sudden my dad and his brother kind of had a falling out. And honest to God, we weren't raised, they were not in our life. But anyways, we heard the story, and as an adult, I found out he was in jail, and it was like, good, stupid jerk. But anyways, my poor brother, he was just lost. He's since passed away, but he was young, 47. He lived a hard life, and 5 kids. But anyways, so it's like, I'm not angry. I'm not angry. Honestly, really, I'm not, and I don't let it affect who I am today. And I want that for everybody else. You know what I mean? Who's going through things, but it gives you stamina. So I competed in a sport called outrigger canoe. Does anybody know what that is? It's Hawaiian-style canoe. You have 5 people, and a steersman has the ama on the side. So I competed in the women's team in California, and you do like 27 miles open ocean. You do 3 or 4 hours of paddling. My goal. Here we go back to goals. I wanted to do the World Championship in Hawaii, which is 41 miles from Molokai to Honolulu. That was my goal. So as I was paddling, I thought I did something to my shoulder, and I went to orthopedic surgeon, sports guy, really great practice out in California. They work on all the Olympic athletes. And they said, oh, it's not your shoulder, it's your neck. I'm like, what are you talking about, my neck? And they said, well, you blew out your disc between C5 and 6, so you need to get a fusion. That's what this cool scar is. It's hard to see it. Kind of looks like a wrinkle now. So they went in through the front of my neck, and they fused those 2 vertebrae together. Now, remember, I broke my back. That was, I'd already done that. That was L1 that I broke. So they did that, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And I was working on a cartoon, which, by the way, is going to be airing on Netflix starting September 1st. I'll tell you more about that I was producing. And I know, right? I'm so excited. So I had to fly to India because the 2 studios we were working with, one was in Mumbai or Bombay, and one was in Calcutta. So this was about 6 months after I had the fusion done. We get on this plane, we go out there. Now, also, I don't know if you guys remember when Mumbai had that big attack it was about 10 years ago or something. Anyways, we were supposed to be there like 2 days after that attack. So the trip we took was only 2 months after that attack. So when I went, I put my hair in a cap and told everybody I was Canadian. Like, I'm not American. So we go to Mumbai, and I don't. Has anybody been to India? Oh, it's. I'm sure there's beautiful parts, but Mumbai is not, and it's very sad because there's so much homeless. I mean, it's just I can't even describe it. But one thing that I loved were the dogs. There's dogs everywhere, and they're homeless too, and it's sad. So where we stayed was in Juhu Beach. Not that it was pretty at all, but there was 2 stairways down to the beach. And every morning, every night when I come back from the studio, I would go and I would feed the stray dogs. That was like, it was kind of like, and I have videos. They're so cute, And they would burrow in the sand. So I came home one night, and they were having this big wedding, and they had covered where the staircase was. So I was like, no problem. I'll walk down here. I'll just jump down to the sand. Unbeknownst to me, there was like a gradient thing. So it kind of went down like that. So it's really dark, and I go, and I leap, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And I'm going down, and I'm like, just tuck and roll. So I tucked and rolled, snapped my neck, broke it. The pain went down my left arm, and I'm sitting on the sand going, oh, this is not good. And all of a sudden, I got the federales, hey, you're going to go back with the guns. You have to come back up here. I'm all like, okay, and I'm like crawling. I had to crawl through the brush to get up to the thing, and I'm like, okay. So I called the studio, and I said, I'm going to be out tomorrow, and I took a long hot bath, but anyways, I stayed, didn't go to a doctor, worked, flew to Calcutta, worked for another week, 30-hour flights, different flights, home to California, went to my doctor the next day, and I was like this, hey, yeah, I think I screwed something up. Can you help? They did an MRI. Now, actually, it was a blessing. I'll tell you why. I sit down with my doctor, and he has 2 screens sitting in front of us. The first screen, he says, yeah, see that black line right there on your neck? Yeah. He goes, yeah, you broke it. Oh, okay, well, what are we going to do about that? He says, well, we're going to go back in and refuse and fix that so your head doesn't fall off. But then he says, see this one over here? And there was my vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae. From thoracic number 2 to thoracic number 8, I had a tumor that was wrapped around my spine for those 5 vertebrae. And if that were to have burst, I would be paralyzed. I was the 5th person that this has been found on. Most people is diagnosed as multiple sclerosis because I didn't tell people. I thought I had multiple. Here are the symptoms. My right leg would drag, like if I turned, and I'd be like, oh, and I tripped a lot. And my hand shook horribly. That's why I thought it was MS. So bad that I was drinking coffee one day, and my son's like, Mom, why is your hand shaking? I'm like, it's not shaking. Hey, hell, look at that. So this thing had squeezed my spinal cord and was cutting off the nerves to my right side. So I'm like, what do we do now? He's like, well, first we're going to do surgery, number 1. 2 months later, we're going to go in, and we're going to drill through each of those vertebrae, and we're going to pull that lipoma avium out of your back. I said, okay. But I want to do the world championship this year. I said, or in 2010. This was 2009. June 29th, my birthday, I had the last surgery on my back. And by this time, the whole, rehabilitation and Olympic people, they all knew me because after every surgery, I had to go and get back to shape and all of that. And I had my own trainer, and they put a lot of belief in me. And I was kind of the champion there was, like I said, 5 people that had the surgery, but I was coming back the quickest. ABC did this whole news thing on me. I mean, it was like kind of surreal. I came out of the surgery, the pain that I had for probably 20 years in my middle back, it was like between my shoulder blades. I thought it was normal pain, like everybody had it. It felt like somebody's hand was just crushing my spine. But I thought, oh, it's just, sitting at a computer or whatever. Was gone immediately. So I went back to training, and I said, I'm training for the world championship. And after 6 weeks, back in the gym, training, working on the show, got to December. My father was diagnosed in 9 days with pancreatic cancer, and he passed away. He was the healthiest person, had more Harvard medical journals that he'd read how not to get cancer, and sure enough, it was awful. So I was training When he was in it was Christmas time. He passed away on January 2nd. And 3 days later, I went back to working out. I stopped working. My mother came down from where she had retired up into Seattle, lived with me in Los Angeles, and I said, we're going to get through this. My sister, we're going to get through this. But I told my dad that I was doing the world championship, and he's like, well, we're all going to come to Hawaii and see you. And so I didn't stop. And I did the whole year, trained my ass off. This is back in the day when I used to arm wrestle all you guys. I was a stud, and I did the world championship in 2010. 41 miles, 7 hours, 15 minutes, the most amazing experience. And of course, I crossed the finish line and was crying because all I could think of was my dad. So goals, perseverance, not letting things stop you, obstacles, out of the way. I'm telling you right now, it's all up here. And we can change those attitudes. We can keep the negative ones in, but you know what? Deflect them, keep the positive ones. So with that, I really want to take questions, and then we're going to show the video. If you have to leave for another panel, go. Don't feel funny. Okay. So I'm going to leave this microphone, thank you, over here. Don't be shy. I'll hug every single person that takes, I'll spend a half an hour hugging y'all and take a picture if you want, but yeah, don't be shy.
Congratulations on your son graduating.
Oh, thank you. Yes, my son is graduating. First, I want to ask, how's everybody doing? Is it okay? Did I freak you out today? I really didn't want to. I just wanted to. Okay. Okay, good. All right. Oh, there you go. Okay. Darling.
So it's kind of like a two-part question.
Come closer.
So it's kind of like a two-part question.
Okay.
So first off, how do you feel, know this is what you wanted to do? And then what advice would you give a upcoming college graduate?
Okay. Great questions. So I was working in sales, hated it. I was 29 years old, and the company I was working for, I always wanted to be in the entertainment industry, but I didn't want to be a starving artist. You know what I'm saying? So I tried the modeling thing, and it was just like, ew, this is boring. And I was living up near all the studios, and I got an opportunity to work at a recording studio, $10 an hour. It was nothing, right? General manager said, oh my God, you have way too much experience. I said, I don't care, I'm changing it up. And he said, well, you can learn whatever you want. Important, internships. Take a little less money sometimes. But he said, you can learn how to edit, you can learn how to record, you can learn all of that. I was there for a year, met every studio, because Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers all had to record their cartoons there. Warner Brothers approached me, feature animation, will you come work for us as a PA? On a movie? You bet. Did that. Understood, learned the whole process. It was traditional animation is a fascinating process. And I worked on, the first film I worked on was Quest for Camelot as a PA, making $600 a week. And in 5 years, I made it to line producer for Scooby-Doo the movie, making $2,000 a week. And that's all through hard work and learning everything that I could. So my suggestion to you is to offer yourself up as much as possible for free at first. You know what I mean? It's like, obviously, yes, you have to work, but if you work for less, say, hey, but I'd like to learn this, this, and this. Internships. I hired many people that were interns onto films. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Not that. Hi. I don't mean to get real heavy here, but
Oh, and I didn't.
This is I'm gonna get to the question eventually, but for the longest time I was bullied at school, and I never knew how to bring it up to my parents or my sister, because I've heard stories from them like, oh, I was never bullied, blah, blah, blah. I'm great at school. I'm now going to UTSA's, blah, whatever. But I never knew who to approach, and it followed me from 5th grade all the way up to my sophomore year last year. And ever admitted this to one person, and they told me that this panel, like they wanted to come and they told me to go to this panel. I've only ever admitted this to one person, but I had suicidal thoughts. I ended up cutting my wrists, and I just didn't know who to turn to. My friend told me to come here and tell people that it would help. And my question is, I'm finally, I quit a bunch of classes where most of my bullies were, and now I'm approaching my junior year doing classes I've wanted to do forever. And I just wanted to know, when you're dealing with those kinds of people, how do you ignore them? How do you not let them get to you? I know you probably mentioned it already, but I don't know what to do.
First of all, thank you very much for sharing, okay?
Thank you.
You know, we do things for help. You know, you did that. I did the very similar thing when I was 17. I took a lot of pills because I needed help, and I couldn't ask my parents because they weren't that kind of a parent, right? Okay. I didn't want to die, as I know you don't. You are in a point, how old are you?
16.
Okay, you're 16, okay? You have a lot going on for you, right? These people that are bullying, they don't have a lot going on for them. They are wasting their lives if they're taking their time in your precious life. So what you do is you do the blinders, because you're going to hit 17, 18, 19, 20, and when you're 25, you're going to come back and you're going to tell me, you know what, Kath? I don't remember how awful they were because I put it out of my head. And you surround yourself with the people that care about you. You surround and if the parents and here's the thing, not all parents and sisters and brothers, mine weren't supportive because they didn't understand. So I found the groups, and I found a community, which this community is really good for that. And I surrounded myself, and I think that's very important for you. And I think you stop. You ignore the hell out of those people because they do not mean a thing to you.
That's why I really love your character, Texas.
Oh,
I always looked up to her.
Well, I really hurt my hand hitting everybody in the balls, so just do that. Thank you, sweetheart. I want a hug afterwards.
Thank you. I first want to say thank you for this panel. It's been amazing, so thank you so much for it. My question is this, is that right now I am going through a time, I am a grad student, and it's really difficult because I'm trying to figure out still what I really want to do with my life. So I was wondering if you have some advice to give for those.
I definitely do. Here's the thing. We all look at things in big, huge chunks, and that's what makes us overwhelmed. Okay, I'm a grad student. I need to be the doctor now, right? Well, you're not going to be grad student. I'm not what you're saying. I'm just saying, just for an example, it doesn't go from A to Z, okay? Things happen incrementally, and you get things that come to you when you're ready for them. So if you start by whatever you're majoring in or what you're doing, right? You start finding organizations, small things, baby steps to enter you into that type of field, okay? Things start opening up. When I went to Warner Brothers, I didn't start out as a producer. I started out as a peon. But I didn't think of it as that. I respected every single job that I had. I don't care what I'm paid. If it's $10 an hour or $50 an hour, I'm going to give 100%. When you do that, so much comes back to you. When you put it out there, when you start maneuvering and interacting with people in the field that you want to do, I tell you, doors open up, things come your way, and before you know it, you're like, oh my God, I have 4 years experience already in this thing that I love to do. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to start knocking on those little doors. They'll open the big ones. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank
I know you can do it. Next year, come back and tell me what you did.
Okay.
All
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, bud.
Pleasure to see you again in person.
Yes, good to see you too.
So more or less, I'm kind of going through the same kind of situation. I mean, hell, after RTX, I'm still even unclear about what I'm going to do when it comes down to going into school and whatnot, because I've still got so many courses that I need to either like re-pick up or whatnot. But like after I did an animation for Mega Bloks before, what was it? After RTX last year, I pretty much through like depression and just like and losing my grandfather and whatnot, I just completely shut down creatively and didn't really know what I was doing. I managed to shake myself out of it and put something out before, at least like the week before coming up here, but now it's like that big question of, do I take what this limited skill set that I've got and try to go buck wild with it and, you know, sort of do that equivalent of like, you know, put school off a little bit more and try to see if like this thing pans out or not, or what?
Here's my suggestion. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is we are all so focused on perfection, and that's such a horrible thing. Like, we come to these conventions and we see these young people doing amazing things on videos. You know, everybody wants to work for Rooster Teeth. There are a lot of amazing studios out there, but also, my God, technology, you can do all this stuff yourself. So I think, well, you definitely, because it's passion, it would be good for you to continue making your videos, right? And doing that, because that's what you love. Mm-hmm. If you find a position doing that, A++, right? But the thing is, you got to live as well.
True.
So sometimes we have to do things that, I'll give you a very good example. Are you guys ready for this? And it's just about me right now. I went back to school, right? I'm going back to school. First semester, I didn't work. I was like, I got to just focus on school and see how hard it is. Second semester, I'm like, I want to work part-time, but I don't want to work a lot. Well, I'm not so proud. I'm not going to, I have a second interview with Apple. I love Apple. Apple will allow me to be able to go to school, have benefits, and work somewhere, and still do voiceover, and still produce here to LA. Like, it's okay. You have to find the things that work for you at the time, okay? And there's enough hours to work and do your passion at night. So I would suggest you continue down the road. Don't put school off at that. I mean, pick the two things that you can do at the same time. So if it's animation and school, if you got like, you know, a sugar mama that's paying your way, or get your job, you know, and then do school, job, and animation. But give yourself a timeline. We all, you know, sometimes we kind of just go, woo, caution to the wind. I do 5-year increments. I always do 5-year increments. And so, I'm going to share something else. You guys are going to you have to go, oh, I want a big gasp when I tell you this. So, you know, I had first chapter in my life, I was in sales. 20 years I did producing a feature animation voiceover. I just turned 50. I'm doing now the third chapter, which is medicine. I know, ready? I'm 50. Thank you. Yeah. So it's never too late, right? To go, it changes. Things shift. Mm-hmm. So pick the two things and make it happen.
And just one last little
Yes.
quick thing. Would it be possible if I asked you, like, say online or whatnot, to have you maybe cameo in my stuff or something?
I would love that. I'd be more than happy to.
Have sort of like that.
As long as I can't be Tex or I can't be Glinda or anything like that. We come up with some fun other thing, okay?
Something like what you guys did with the voice of Cortana for Ruby. Kind
You
of thing.
got it. We'll make it
Thank you
happen,
so
bro.
much.
My pleasure. Hello.
I've got a couple questions I could ask, but I'm only going to ask one. Would you like heavy or light?
Ooh. Whatever will benefit you the most.
Benefit me personally? It could go either way.
Whatever you like.
Okay, I'm going to go with the heavy one then.
Okay.
You talk about recognizing the emotion and sitting on it and then dealing with it. And I've been dealing with depression for a long time, and it's only about the last 4 or 5 years that I've started working towards dealing with it. I had a moment recently where I had a panic attack. I recognized the trigger. I removed myself from the situation. I found a nice quiet space to sit down and try some breathing exercises, and nothing worked. And I ended up calling a friend and relying on my support system, which I hadn't realized is such as amazing as they are. But for that moment when you recognize these things are happening and it's that fight or flight response, what would you suggest to, like, to deal with it in a constructive manner.
First of all, what you did was brilliant, and I hope everybody heard exactly, because it's in my notes. What you did, you sit down, you feel it, and you don't act on it. You just be uncomfortable, okay? But then there are those times where it becomes so overwhelming. Now, I pray that in those moments, everybody has that person to reach out to, because that's what's important, to have that connection so that they can say, step back from the cliff, right? Okay. Secondly, though, I'm going to just mention this thing. So I've battled depression ever since I was a teenager because, byproducts of whatever. And as much as I didn't want to take medication, I wound up having to take medication because it got to the point where I couldn't deal with everything just with the tools that there's chemicals sometimes. There's just chemicals. Like if you have heart disease, you're going to take medicine. If you have diabetes, you're going to take insulin. That's just the reality. We are so, there's such a, your mental health, you take medicine, blah, blah, you must be a crazy person. I hate that. I hate that. It's important. I take 3 pills a day. I'm happy that I have it. It doesn't make me euphoric. It makes me function. It makes me get up and, I still get down. Okay? So I don't know if you're on anything. That's important too. And don't ever be embarrassed by it. Interesting fact, though, for anybody that's been on it. So I'm on these 3 pills. I take 225 milligrams. It's called Effexor. I took 100. I thought, I'm going to wean myself off this about a year ago, and I went down to 2 pills. And I thought, I'll be okay. Well, I kind of flatlined. And there's so much stuff in this last year that was kind of tough, and I thought, well, maybe it's just life that's going on that's so tough. So I researched it. So here's interesting. If you're on any medication, anything for any mental, or not mental, any health reason, don't lower your dosages or higher them because you don't know. Because here's the fact. 150 milligrams of this specific type will affect one side of my brain. Okay, I researched it. It doesn't help the serotonin, the dopamine, the thing that gets you up in the morning, the thing that makes you say, I'm going to live today, until you get to 250 milligrams. So as soon as I read that, I was like, well, what the hell? I am totally shortchanging myself. I went back to 3. So nobody ever be afraid. It's something that you talk to your doctors about, because you don't want to have that one time take a permanent for a temporary situation. You know what I'm saying? Because you're worth way too much. So always reach out to me too.
Okay, panel game, very, very strong. This one's actually not about me. I wanted to ask you something. Okay. Although I might have to preface it with a little thing about me. Okay. Such is the nature of the beast. This is a weird word to say. I was fortunate enough to spend essentially a semester in more or less constant pain, which gave me wonderful perspective on life. I fortunately didn't break anything permanently. But I wanted to ask, so I have a personal standard for a bad day, and that is, am I on fire? And if I'm not on fire, then fuck yeah, it's a great fucking day. Apologies to any children in the room.
I'm with you.
So do you have what is your standard for a bad day?
I like that. Well, here's what happened. This is what I do. So if I'm feeling the clouds starting to come over, I will take inventory. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. What is going on, first of all? Secondly, really, is the sky falling? And am I, in Korea, North Korea, under the horrible man's watchful eye? And I go through all these different things. And I'm like, I'm safe. I got a roof over my head. I got my lovely dog. I've got food in the fridge. I got my wonderful son. My mom, check. And then I go, fuck yeah. And I say, you know what? This too shall pass. And I do that. And I also, there's ability, and I wish I could get into this, but the brain is amazing. And I also will change it. Thank you. I will sit and I'll say, you know what? Smile. I smile. In my house, I look pretty silly, but I'm like, it's okay. Smiling it changes your chemistry in your brain. It'll actually help you start feeling better. So you're on target, dude, with what you're doing. So that's what I do too.
This too shall pass. You're an OK Go fan?
Yeah. This too shall pass. And as they say in Australia, fucking oath. I learned that. I love it. Fucking oath.
Save that one for the next RTX, I think.
Yes.
might remember me from yesterday. Actually, not everybody was here yesterday. I've been watching Red vs. Blue for 10 years now, since I was 11, so you can probably picture little 11-year-old me. You know, Texas was kind of the leading female of my life, and I base a lot of stuff on that. I'm actually here with a friend, but she's in the concert right now, so I feel kind of safe in saying this, but she's been with me all through high school. I got her into Rooster Teeth, she got me into RTX, so this is my first time, but you know, it's been hard. I got out of college, couldn't pay for it anymore, so they kicked me out. Kind of trying to find out where I'm going with my life, I guess, and I came up to her one day because we live in a small town. We gather at a huddle house every time she's in town, and I'm like, I don't know what I can do anymore. And then she was like, well, explain it to me. And I was like, you see Red vs. Blue now? And I was like, you know that time that church just goes to text for the last time and just tells her to take a rest? That's what I feel right now. And she was like, well, let's go to RTX. And so I jumped in line, and she gave me her code so I could see you guys. I wanted to say you have a lot of experience here. This was one of the very few panels I wanted to see for sure. I ran all the way here. But I wanted to know if any of your personal experience went into text, because text was such a founding female role for me, I guess. And you've said a lot today. I wanted to know if there was more to that.
Well, you know, I love playing that character, and I always have, because in the back, I think, of everybody's head, you want to be like a superhero or a strong lead person in something, right? And so, yes, very much so. You know, I've always kind of owned it and just said, you know, I am badass motherfucker Tix. But, you know, as it went on and it got, you know, kind of heavy at the end when she was going away, I mean, I would sit in that recording booth and it was really emotional. It's kind of like, God, you know, I mean, church and her having those interactions. So, you know, when you play a character that long, it kind of does tend to come out, and, you know what I mean, you kind of put part of your heart and soul into it. I'm glad that you came. Sometimes we all need to take a rest, right? Just not a permanent one, but just take a rest for a little bit and get back on track A, and you know, and just take day at a time and figure out what it is that you want to do, you know. So, but I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here's what I want to do, guys. I have a question. I can stay a little late to get to you guys, but I really like to show you guys a video. Can we show the video, and then I'll talk to you all guys after, because I know everybody probably has another panel to go to at 1 o'clock. So let's rock and roll with do you guys mind sitting down, and I'll come in? Okay. All right. We're going to show this video because you guys got to leave on a happy note. I could sing for the next 10 minutes. That'd make you happy. Okay, so let me give you, I guess I should do this. Okay. So a gentleman that I've worked with at Warner Brothers, and he's an amazing visual effects artist. He works with Lego, huge, and does stop motion. This is stop motion Lego. This is not CGI Lego. And so there's 2 episodes. Because of the fact that the movie is coming out, you know, Superman versus Batman or whatever, he decided to do like a little parody thing. So I'm going to show you there's only 2 episodes. The second one is actually debuting today on YouTube and all of that, but I asked him if I could show it first here, which he said yes, which is nice. Okay, let's see if I can. World exclusive. The first one is on the internet, but you have to see the first one to understand the second one. So the first one's like 3 minutes long. Make sure I get that. Okay. And if somebody can lower the lights a little bit or turn, you know, I don't know how that, if you guys can do that, that'd be great. And voice? It's Kara. Yeah, because Robin was a woman, like the old school. I don't know if you guys knew that, like if you go to the old cartoons. And then in the back is Joe Taylor, who does the air traffic, but he plays Arrow. And we are doing another, we were asked to do, and it's a hush-hush thing that is really amazing. There's a really